The original PlayStation launched in Japan in 1994. It was actually a cooperation between Sony and Nintendo. Nintendo wanted a CD-based console to compare with that of Sega's at the time, and the two companies set about collaborating. However, towards the end, Nintendo pulled out, and then Sony was left with all the research and development for a machine that already worked. And so Sony set about entering the game industry. It finished the machine and polished up all the things, signed up a couple of game developers, and put the game console to market in Japan in '94. Later on in 1995, the console released in other parts of the world, and it's around about that time, towards the end of '95 to about '96, that the console came to South Africa. Sega was struggling at the time in South Africa with its Saturn console, and it was a market that company had traditionally had a strong hold of, given the lack of Nintendo's presence. So Sony came along at the right time with the PlayStation and gave Sega a run for its money. Sega would later on try to launch the Dreamcast in South Africa and then pull out of the hardware business altogether, giving the entire South African market to Sony on a golden platter. When the PlayStation 2 launched, it immediately became the dominant gaming console. The market was starved for games consoles and machines on which to play games. PC gaming was still quite technical and tricky to get into, and with Sony having the market to itself, it enjoyed a lot of the exclusive titles that other games consoles in the other markets would have access to. A testament to how successful the PlayStation 2 was is that it's still on sale today, even with the PlayStation 3 having been on sale for 5 or 6 years and the PlayStation 4 about to go on sale. The PlayStation 2 went on to rule the local console gaming scene for 6 years before the PlayStation 3 was launched. That console, unfortunately, was doomed from the beginning. With its powerful cell processor, the PlayStation 3 was inherently difficult to develop for. Microsoft's console, meanwhile, had a lot of developers working on it, and it was slightly easier to develop given that the console used DirectX, a Windows technology. Sony relied on its first-party developers to develop exclusives, strong games with great stories, and ultimately that did win over the PlayStation fanbase. They wanted more of what they had in the PlayStation 1 and 2, and Sony delivered. With the PlayStation 3 now 6.5 years old, it's time for something new. Sony went back to the drawing board with the PlayStation 4. It went and asked developers what they wanted to develop for, and ultimately what they chose was, unsurprisingly, a PC platform. So the heart of the PlayStation 4 now has components that developers have in the machines that they use to make games, rather than custom hardware, which was the norm in the past. With its clean, neat lines, the PlayStation 4 is a modern update that really plays it safe. Sony's not been too controversial here, but it has added some nice touches. The swept back profile makes it scream speed, and that's quite fitting because the console's got the innards that make it the most powerful of this generation. It's some 50% faster than the competing Xbox One. The face of the console sports 2 USB ports, and then there's the Blu-ray drive slot, which is neatly hidden here, and it has not got a tray, just like the PlayStation 3. The eject button and then the power button are also neatly integrated, and they revert to the touch type buttons that were originally featured on the PlayStation 3. The speed theme continues along the back, where all the vents resemble the diffuser on a Formula 1 car. Those are joined by digital optical output and a digital HDMI port, so there are no analog outputs here. Goodbye to those with old TVs. There's also a network port for those who don't want to use the onboard wireless, and an accessory port that's going to be used for the PlayStation Eye accessory. Inside the PlayStation 4 sits an 8-core processor based on the x86 instruction set that computers use. It's also got 8 GB of GDDR5 RAM. It's just really fast memory that's used on most of the modern graphics cards and computers. The rest of the console's also got wireless, it's got a 500 gig hard drive, and everything else that developers wanted to make the best games that they possibly could. And of course, then there's that controller. So here's the evolution of the PlayStation controllers over the years. The good old grey controller from the PlayStation 1. No analog buttons here and no rumble motors, but it was a reliable old friend for many gamers. Then we moved on to the PlayStation 2. This time around it had analog sticks as standard, and the buttons were also analog. Rumble motors were also standard, and that was a huge upgrade from the PlayStation 1 controller. The PlayStation 3 controller gained wireless and a PlayStation button, as well as motion sensing capabilities. The PlayStation 4 controller then. This is the biggest upgrade to all of the PlayStation controllers since the move from the original PlayStation to the PlayStation 2. It's got a bit wider, it's got a trackpad now, And it's also got new triggers around the back. Those were the biggest wanted upgrade from the Xbox controller, which people said had the best triggers in the business. There's also a light bar around the back, and that works in conjunction with a PlayStation Eye and this controller's motion sensing capabilities. Around the bottom there's also an accessory port where you'll be able to plug in other things, and one of those is a headset. This means no longer having to fight with a Bluetooth headset that has limited battery life. The overall feel of the controller though, that's quite solid. Everything feels a bit cleaner and sturdier. And there are also these two new buttons, the options button and a share button. This one, when pressed, will let you share any moment of gameplay with the internet. And that's a huge addition and will play a big part of this generation's console gaming. So what's the PlayStation 4 like to use? What's its interface like? And the operating system? What features are there? Well, to find out, everybody who gets a PlayStation 4 will have to set it up on day one with a patch that can be downloaded. That can either be pre-downloaded and installed off a USB stick, or you can connect your PlayStation 4 to the internet and download it that way, as you would any other update. This one has already been set up here at the launch venue for the PlayStation, and we're going to go ahead and see what awaits the person who sets it up for the first time. The standard startup screen prompts you to push the PlayStation button, so we're going to go ahead and do that. You can create a new user or use one of the pre-selected users that have already been set up here, and that will ask you for your PlayStation network details. Obviously we don't need those, we've got no internet access here. From here we'll get access to the few functions that are available on a base PlayStation that's not connected to the internet. What's new is just a friend feed and lets you see what your friends are doing. Of course you'll need to be online for that. The Playroom is a tech demo that lets you see what the capabilities of the DualShock 4 controller are, assuming you have a PlayStation Eye. This is an augmented reality demo, and that's what it relies on. Live from PlayStation lets you view gaming action from around the world. The share button that we showed you earlier actually lets you share your gameplay live with other people across the world, and they can watch you play. Of course, an internet browser, as we've become accustomed to on the consoles. And finally, your games library, so any games that you have installed or have downloaded from the PlayStation Store will show up here. Push up on the controller from this screen and you'll get access to other features. The PlayStation Store, notifications area with notifications, a friends list, your messages, a gaming party, which has been a feature that many people have used on the Xbox systems, your gamer profile, trophies that you've earned in your games, and of course settings. This entire menu system has been cleaned up from the complicated layout that's been used on the PlayStation 3 and its cross-media bar. One of the best new features for the console on its own is probably the power saving settings. This lets you suspend any game while you're playing, so you no longer have to save your game and then switch off the console. You can just push the PlayStation button, suspend the console, and continue gaming anytime later on in the week, assuming the power doesn't fail. But what you really want to know is what games are available for the PlayStation. At launch there'll be a handful of titles, and one of them is Killzone Shadowfall. I've got this here just to see what the visuals are like, what this console is capable of right now, even though this is a first generation game. Later on in life we expect things to look fantastic as developers come to grips with the console's capabilities. Something computer gamers will be used to is having an installation period, and all PlayStation 4 games will have to install to the hard drive for optimized performance. The PlayStation 4 goes on sale this Friday, the 13th of December 2013. Its retail price will be 6,299 Rand, but if you're smart you can shop around and find a bundle that includes an extra controller, the PlayStation Eye, and even one of the launch titles for around 7,500 Rand. Some of those launch games include Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, Battlefield 4, Call of Duty Ghosts, FIFA 2014, Injustice Gods Among Us, Killzone Shadowfall, and Knack. Pick up your console this December and you'll be one of the first to get it in the country. The stocks are limited, and the rest of us will probably have to wait until 2014 to lay our hands on Sony's latest beast.